And we are recording and streaming. Oh, so perfect. Just a rarity for me. Thanks from comes. I got a real good podcast. Mine start the show and immediately start chewing. Well, it is what it is, I guess. 80 years and 1 hour to the minute. 80 years and an hour and 2 minutes ago. First A bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. 8:40, I think 8:46 a.m. August 6th, 1945. Right? That's 80. Well, August 6th, 2025, 9:49 a.m. Eastern Time. I probably would chug this if I wasn't burping so much right now. The podcast is sponsored by International Gladiator Beverage 242 Energy Cola. It tastes like the OG Rockstar, and it is fantastic. It's twist off. It is carbonated. I'm not a huge fan of carbonation. I probably shouldn't say that about the thing that sponsors me, but they didn't invent carbonation. That's not a judgment on them. That's just me personally. And especially on, I don't know what causes, if you don't drink carbonation, what causes burping? I don't know. And it's probably not terribly important. I woke up I slept fine. I got like 10 hours of sleep. I don't, or nine or whatever. I went to the gym, but whatever. Taking a long weekend. Tomorrow's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. You guys all have to join the locals for $1,000 each. Give me 50 million a month. I had to sneeze. Yeah. Well, anyway, like I said, I'm gonna try to, do I have to sneeze? Come on. Okay. I always take my glasses off because I sneeze on my glasses. And you can wipe water off, but anything else streaks. But yeah, I've just been waking up earlier and it's hard to get guests to do an 8 a.m. show, so I'm gonna start doing solo rants and actually start doing them live. That's why there's no thumbnail. That's why the thumbnail is just a logo, and that's why there's no title, because I don't know what it is. But yeah, I think what it's at the last couple of days is of solo rants in the past have been guest doesn't show up. Very rarely did I plan them, but sometimes I did. Um, but I really only would ever do them if I had like an idea that was percolating around. But I think it would be kind of an interesting challenge, and it might not be the best product. So I'm not even gonna try to pitch you as like these are worth watching. But I think it would be kind of interesting to do what I'm doing right now, which is I don't have anything to talk about. And can I fill 45 minutes to an hour just going? And I really don't know if I can, because I'm about 2 minutes in right now, and I already don't know what to say. So I don't know. I guess I'll just start with I don't know, kind of a dream I had. I had a dream I was looking out and like the Milky Way was taking up the entire sky. And it was because the Doppler effect as it emits sound, but then the sound source itself is approaching. So the 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 frequency of the noise impulses becomes quicker and quicker and quicker, no, 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 no. And then it goes away. Obviously it becomes louder. And then I know with the light there's red shift and blue shift, right? If it's moving closer to you or moving farther away. I had this dream that of course in a dream no one questions it. I was like there's with like a crowd of people and we all looking at the Milky Way. And I don't mean like it was like bright. I mean like horizon to horizon, like left to right, up at like almost as high up as you could. It was almost the entire field of view. And it was so insanely like even as a dream, it was just bewildering. And whatever the explanation was in the dream, like, oh, this happens once every, even though it's not. And here's the thing: is you could see the whole Milky Way, so clearly it wasn't the Milky Way because we're in the Milky Way. It wasn't like a band; it was actually like a top-down view of a spiral galaxy. Whatever. But I don't know. It's kind of cool because in the dream, you're looking at this thing, a billion light years away, and then it starts to noticeably speed up and then zip across the horizon. And in the dream, it was explained that it was like the Doppler effect, but with light. So it was actually moving, but because it had been, a billion years ago and it's moving closer, some shit, it just zipped by. It was just a cool dream. There's kind of nothing else to go from that, you know? And so maybe this is a reason why, maybe solar rants aren't the best idea to randomly do. I need to turn the air conditioner back on. Um, but so I read a book a couple weeks ago called Project Azorian, which I had like tangentially known about, I don't know, for a long time. Yeah, I've always just been into kind of Cold War history. Would be funny if I just vomited right now. Um, and I knew the Glomar Explorer and the Glomar response we can neither confirm nor deny. And I always known about it, but I didn't really thought too much of it. Like we went and picked up a Soviet sub. And then I kept seeing it was I guess it was like an Audible original, meaning it's free. And it was just, it was a cool thumbnail. It was looking up at a ship in the water, so it's, dark and then sunlight coming through. And it had been recommended so many times. And I normally don't read anything like recommended because it's normally all dog shit. It's like, it's just some fucking thing you've seen 100 trillion times of some douchebag like how I made my own way. Like, and I'm sure you did, but fuck off. I don't care. But I kept seeing this, and I was like, well, I am a sucker for this shit. And so finally, I listened to it, and I'm a conspiracy guy. Anyone that watched this show knows, like, I am not. You don't got to pitch conspiracies to me. I actually have to like reel myself in because I want to believe. And I'm up for anything. Some people are like very, you kind of see it all the time now. Even now, people tiptoe around it. They're like, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. Dude, I've been like mentally unhinged since like middle school reading about this shit. I don't care. And the title of conspiracy theorist means nothing to me. I don't give a fuck. It's provable US history. JFK getting shot and the CIA covering their tracks is no more or less history than yesterday, I did an episode with Morgan Lorette. It's just history. It's not that one thing's a conspiracy and another thing's a fact. They're all factual. They're just factual. The last full moon you saw is as factual as the conspiracy, I don't know, to create the Federal Reserve, where a bunch of wealthy industrialists went on Senator Aldrich's private train car using pseudonyms and went to an island to talk about something and passed it on New Year's Eve. It's just what it is. All right. And if you're watching this tomorrow, this show is just as much history as that. It's just as much history as the fact that there was something called Operation Vigilant Guardian, run by NORAD and the United States Air Force on September 11th, 2001, about planes getting hijacked and used as bombs and suicide things. And a bunch of planes were out on this drill. So when it started happening, people had to start saying, or fighter pilots had to start saying, real world or exercise. Dick Cheney, for the first time in 50 years, a week prior had removed the NORAD's authorization to dispatch fighter jets on their own, I think. And then a week after 9/11, put it back. Just fucking fun for this energy drink company is like we're sponsoring him. Oh God. All I'm saying is the lizard reptiles. No, I mean, but these are all provable things and they're fascinating. They're outright fascinating. And I do have another phone call, so I have to watch the time. Um, But so I say that to say, like, you don't have to pitch this stuff to me. A lot of people do. It does need to be pitched. And I know I just 2 minutes ago called them all faggots, but like, hey, whatever. You grew up with this and you never questioned any of it, and it's new to you, and there's social pressure. Again, I personally think that's weakness. You should think for your own and fuck every, but whatever. Better late than never. So I'm not someone that needs to be like pitched this shit. That being said, Project Azorian was so mind-boggling. It was so mind-boggling. Like very rarely have I ever like listened to a book again as soon as I finished it. I did it with Raven Rock by Garrett Graff. I did it with Blitzed by Norman Ohler. I think I did it with Operation Paperclip by Annie Jacobson. I think just those three. Maybe Dark Sun by Richard Rhodes. I didn't re-listen to this book. I did something I've never done. I immediately went and found another book and started it. And the second book is so the first one's Project Azorian. I think the guy that wrote it passed. There's the book. Yeah. Project Azorian by Norman Polmar. It's got the boat and the whatever. I do believe he passed. That was the first one I read. And the second one I read is by a guy named Josh Dean, who I've reached out to several times now. He has not responded. The Taking of K-129. K-129 was the ship by Josh Dean. And it's like, so why is this so insane to somebody like me who loves this shit? Face value, I mean, sure, technically impressive, absolutely. Reach down, grab this thing. But again, happened in the 70s. We went to the moon a decade earlier. SR-71 is 15 years old. In the 50s, the NSA was bouncing radio signals, not even from homeland, not even from, huge arrays on the homeland. Ow. But on ships, bouncing it off the moon, using the moon as a radar. That was in the 50s. That was in the fucking 50s. In case radar went down and you needed to use a celestial object. And then a couple years later, they did it off fucking Mars. Fuck me. Nuclear subs. When Eisenhower was president, was it Polaris? Where it wasn't Khrushchev. Khrushchev was when Kennedy was. Maybe it was Khrushchev. But Eisenhower actually brought one of the Soviet premiers over and they watched it on a television feed, it breaking through the ice, I think on Christmas Day or so in the 50s. I mean, fuck me, right? I just found out a couple months ago that the ball turrets on World War II bombers had rudiment like early primitive computers, like lead time and shit. Picking up a ship from a sub from the bottom of the ocean. I think it was 3 months. Yeah, sure, very impressive. More impressive is the fact that you did it without letting the Soviets know you did it. That's very impressive. But even that, sure, they broad strokes built a giant fucking ship that had an opening under it, and it would lower down these cables, or actually these long metal tubes that were actually made using knowledge from the creation of artillery barrels, so perfectly fitted and it would weigh down and it'd pick it up and then obviously it contracts and it even had these little claws and stuff and lights and everything. Even the lighting was cool. Like they made special lights so it wouldn't diffuse out. All this cool stuff. But again, just being like very harsh critic of it, not like not incredible. Like very impressive, but not like incredible. I only say that because things that had already happened before it, which were far more technologically incredible. Putting a man on the moon, putting a man in orbit, SR-71 Blackbird, bouncing radio signals off the moon. we had already the thermonuclear bomb, rocketry, all insanely impressive. So this, not again, it's very impressive, but not like, oh my God, it doesn't have that same gut punch when you're reading about the SR-71, like what it was doing, before your parents were born. What's like fucking with me though is like the psychological operation shroud around it. All of it is great spy movie shit, It's being built, I think, out like in like LA Harbor or whatever, or LA Port, whatever the port of LA is. And you have barbed wire fences and stuff, and you have guys walking around with a high vis vest, and like they're actually CIA, like they're not normal security guards, they're legit like paramilitary, like Dale guy, all sexy, whatever. But again, kind of like what you expect, just as a threshold of, in general, the Cold War was nuts. The actual sub is far more impressive. The fact that we have nuclear powered subs with ballistic missiles with thermonuclear warheads on it, like that's way more impressive than like picking it up, right? If I used a fishing rod to pick up my iPhone across the screen, it'd be impressive. Big man, he hooked that. Wow, he hooked that. The iPhone's way more impressive than the fishing rod, is my point. Like the in-depth shit they went to. Not like classification and levels of and need to know. I get all that, and as with most things, even pilots in the Cold War never knew what the actual mission was. They were told they were going here, and they knew the airspace, but it was in case you were captured, it couldn't be tortured out of you because you actually didn't know. They could get some stuff out of you, but if you actually don't know, like if I had to guess, let's say I had like Dale on and Dale wanted to discuss a topic, I would be like, "Yeah, it's Dale." And yet Dale is CIA, shadowy spook guy, but I'd be like, it was just a show. You could torture it out of me. And eventually, if you tortured it, I'd show you my iPhone. I'd be like, these are my private texts with Dale. Like, it's nothing. But if I actually had no idea that Dale was like doing something, and there's nothing to like withdraw from me, I wouldn't know. So I get all the need to know stuff and yada, yada, yada. And the cover story was that they were mining manganese nodules. I think they said they were, I don't know. I think they said they're like this size. They were, they kind of looked like volcanic basalt, but lighter. All right. But like how far they went to make sure everyone thought it really was a mining rig. Like to the guys they hired, like purposely hiring dudes that were like overweight construction workers. So if you looked at it, it'd be like, okay, what? Yeah, they're construction workers. They gave them manganese nodules, and the thought behind it was you're to give these guys little souvenirs and tell them not to share them or talk about the ship you're working on because it's proprietary and it's very top secret. You're working for Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire. He was the Elon Musk at the time. Knowing full well all these guys would go to the local bars and try to get laid or try to impress the other construction workers about what they were doing. And hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but tossing back their 10th beer or something. And they so much so the fucking CIA, who they didn't know, it was a front company, we'll just call it whatever, Tommy Construction. Tommy Construction, which was housing them, gave them tons of free liquor and put them in a hotel near bars. So they would go out and talk about this shit, even though they weren't supposed to. Supposed to. But that was the intention. You were telling them not to do it, knowing full fucking well they were going to do it, and that actually being your plan. To have them at local pubs, because that's where you would go if you're just, in general, picking up intel. The top engineers were all like CIA guys, but actual engineers so they could ask questions. But even the other engineers didn't know it. So you'd have five engineers in a room. So God forbid there was a Soviet mole somewhere, they'd be sitting in there and just say fucking Yuri is sitting in on his 50th Glomar Explorer meeting because they did. The Soviets actually, to their fucking credit, the Soviet intelligence was wild. They sent a container ship, which to just, whatever, trade copper. And we're very adamant about being 4 slips away from the Glomar Explorer construction. Like they were fucking fire. But they actually wanted to be to the point where guys would just be like, you're sitting on a meeting, big dude, it really is about manganese nodules. Not knowing that one of the guys in the meetings was actually CIA to make sure it didn't drift. Even little things like esoteric shit that you and I wouldn't think twice about, but esoteric shit about, you know, why does this? And the whole thing was it's deep sea mining, seafloor mining, first of its kind. And they wrapped it up with proprietary information. This is a private company. We're really trying to, make some fucking cheddar here, knowing that there would be like corporate espionage. So it even had to look real to other domestic U.S. corporations who were trying to find out what was in it. Because if they start saying it's proprietary information, it actually has to look like there's proprietary information because you don't know who's in those U.S. corporations. You don't know what Soviet mole's in there. So if there's a Soviet mole in there and they're like, yeah, we're trying to find out what they're doing with the manganese notch, because there's probably interest in that too. Let's say they weren't doing, let's say they didn't suspect something shadowy and they really did believe it was manganese nodules. Well, the Soviets would want to know that too. They don't have private corporations, so they don't have the same innovation. I would imagine that's a huge trade secret, no different than China. So, what's the fucking crusty shit you get in your eyes? And how come I don't get it every morning? Like, what is that? Just gunk? Just a nuke goes off in Portland, and that's the last 10 seconds of my life. What's that stuff in your eyes? And just vaporized. Um, so they actually want it to look like a realistic thing. So when other corporations would start prying, they'd be like, "Oh, they really, man, these," because other corporations didn't have some fucking. Is this a CIA thing? They're just looking at it like it's Howard Hughes. I think he's the first U.S. billionaire. I mean, adjusted for inflation, it was Rockefeller and Carnegie, but the actual first $1 billion, the one and nine zeros, was Howard Hughes. Yeah, you probably want to fucking find out what's going on there. And they saw that they were getting like the top geologists and the top engineers, and they had to make it look like a real thing by paying them top dollar. But being like, nah, bro, we want you here. We fucking want you at Apple. We want you at Tesla, whatever. All the while, the actual engineers thought that they were doing deep sea mining and that like the chunks they had to pick up, maybe it would look like this, maybe. So the entire thing was just like these mirrors of having your own people legitimately think it was this, but it wasn't. And I mean, even the divers. Like the divers they had, it was like when they were all applying for the job, like the person looking at the applications, like all their names are Bob Smith, and it was because they're all Navy fucking SEALs. But a normal like mining rig would only have 2 SEALs on it, and they had to hide the fact that they had 16. So you had all these like square-jawed, jacked guys who acted military would walk around with their shirts tucked in, opening the doors for their superiors. The CIA guy had to pull them aside and was like, "No, no more opening doors for your seniors. Stop standing up straight. Like, stop shaving. Untuck your shirt. Slouch your shoulders." And like, don't do things. Don't like. I think they told him they were like, stop picking up cigarettes and throwing them away, which I guess is just like the discipline nailed into you. And it's obviously this isn't like how every CIA operation is. I get it. It's is the juice worth the squeeze? What they wanted was the US the nuclear submarine, and what they wanted even more. Even so, and here's the crazy thing is like So within the guys that knew it was CIA and knew it wasn't for manganese nodules, that was the inner circle. There was an even more inner circle of we don't even really care about the submarine. We want the warheads from the ICBM or the SLBM. So even the fucking CIA guys who thought they were in the know weren't totally in the know. And it's like none of this is revisionist history. None of this is looking back and going, "Oh, this is why this happened." Like I was reading that book about Grover Cleveland, and the author made a good point. When you're reading about presidents, you often hear anecdotes or stories or whatever from when they were young. And we have this romantic ideal of we pick an action, a thing, of whatever they did. Might be construction guys. Think they're using my balcony. I don't know. They were here yesterday. It's the fucking Glomar Explorer. That'd be so cool if like I was doing this episode and the guys that were using my balcony, who I think are just like Mexican laborers, were actually like CIA. I would be so happy. What was I saying? Juice worth the squeeze. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we have this the author of the Grover Cleveland, but I don't cannot fucking remember his name, but the book's called Man of Iron. He goes, we have this thing where we look back, and it was like uh we 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 retroactively project presidential qualities on them. We go, this is he was always meant to be that. And the story about Grover Cleveland, it's like he was, I don't know, an intern or whatever. He was like an intern at like some law firm, and he was so forgettable and such a disposable young asset. I mean, like, 18 or something, that when all the lawyers left for what is it? A, a liquid lunch, we just go get fucked up. And I guess they got so fucked up that they just, it's just a bunch of just high rolling like Wall Street dudes. And they just got so fucked up, they just decided to call it and they went home. It was like a Tuesday. And because he's so forgettable, he was actually locked in the office. And so he stayed working all night and he told himself, that's the last time I'll be forgotten. But then when told this story later on in his life, Grover was like, that's not at all what happened at all. I was so upset I was locked in there and I just like when I just took a nap on the floor or something. But he's like, we have this thing where we look back and we go, yeah, that was a president. And it's not always the case. It doesn't mean that they're not presidential. By definition, they are. But it's not always you look back and go, yeah, that was that guy. I don't think you go back and look at 5-year-old Dale and be like, that was Delta Force Dale. Dale is in Delta Force by 23. So probably at like, 18, you could probably see some facets in Dale where you're like, yeah, that guy's fucking insane in the best possible way. So it's easy to look back at CIA operations. And again, somebody like me who's just a total fanboy. Oh, fuck, hey, in 15 minutes. All right, we'll go faster. Just a faggot like me who's a total fanboy, I look back at it and it's very easy to go, this was all planned. The crazy thing about this is this was all planned. It's in the fucking documents. It's in the cables. It's in the encryption of going, this is like, this is what we're doing. This is why we're hiring these people. We're hiring this engineer because we know for a fact he's a womanizer who gets coked the fuck up and then spills his guts. He's had problems with these other, DuPont corporations before. That's why we're hiring him because we want this fucker who's probably surveilled by somebody because he's a titan in the industry. We want him spilling the secrets about how this is about manganese nodules. And the fact that that was all planned intentionally, intentionally bringing them in and saying, this is what this is for. And then even more like esoteric shit about stuff that like you and I may not pick up on, but like I don't know, the size of the generator or the number of the generators for whatever that's opening the doors to the boat and the chain goes down and whatever shit to me that is all like it's all industrial metal smokestacks like but even with that they brought on these engineers and they were like, why the fuck does the people that actually like were in the know? It's like the meme of like you know, mom being like, "Are you this is you need this computer for school? For eighth grade?" And it's got like three graphics cards, water cooled, in like a $10,000 CPU. You're like, yeah, it's Microsoft Word requires, and it's clearly for gaming. If you know anything about gaming, you'd be like, that's bullshit. So there's the same equivalent for even when engineers would come on and like service these things, they weren't given the full picture because I think the first guy came on and was like, why do you have like 16 generators? What in God's name are you doing? And like they got rid of that guy and we're like, oh, you're right. And they ended up getting like a CIA guy, I think from Honeywell, and like brought him in, read him in, gave him a false identification. And like I'm not making this up, like picked him up from the airport, put him in a car, took him someplace where the car goes in a garage, and the garage so he can't even see him get out. Literally give him a wig, different clothes, like glasses, and a new ID. Bring him out, make sure he's not seen at all. And then when he is in the building, just like the normal like business park, just like a three-story, just kind of corporate, you know, concrete and glass cutout. They bring him in, and his two assistants are actual CIA armed guards, and they make sure that he always goes by his fake name and shit. He doesn't take phone calls from anyone. And this is just an engineer to work on like the turbines. And he's not allowed to, this is the thing that got me. He's not allowed to stand near, oh, I'm sorry. And then when they take him to work every day, Monday through Friday, for months on end, they do evasive maneuvers, doubling back, making sure they're not followed. And this is just an engineer. And when he's in the buildings, he's not allowed to stand near windows. So there's no identification of him, making him, if anyone did know this guy existed, he would become a huge target. They'd go, we got to find out who that guy is. And so once you finally did, you'd be like, oh, this is fucking so and so. If let's just say the Soviets were watching. And then so the guy they find out doesn't even actually exist. It like the layers of shit for one dude who, it wasn't even that he had some esoteric knowledge about cold fusion. No, it was just so that if anyone ever got to this dude, he wouldn't spill the beans about why there was 16 turbines instead of two. And all I can think about when reading this book is like I have to revise like my own history of reading about the Cold War and conspiracies and stuff, and how I have unwittingly like gate kept people and been like, well, that's just schizophrenia. Like the Cold War is crazy, but dude, you're just making shit up. They don't go into that level of detail. The CIA is crazy, the NSA is crazy, and then like a douchebag, I would label the SR-71, the Polaris bouncing radio signals off the moon. But they don't go that far. They don't make sure the secretary, uses this lipstick as a code for. No, I'm reading this, and they did all of that in spades, in excess. Like, so like I think I owe an apology to like to people of like, I think some things are dog shit. Like I don't, I think we did go to the moon. I'll say why I think we went to the moon, because the Soviets would have, they had already sent a rover to the moon and orbited to the moon, and they'd crashed shit on the moon before. It would be the biggest intelligence coup and propaganda coup to show that we didn't actually go. They would have done that. That to me right there is just like that's it. I don't doubt that it's crazy, and I know there's a lot of plot holes in it, like they lost the telemetry data. Like, oh, we sent an orbiter and it detaches and the guys go down and then they have to jump back up to the orbiter. Well, if they missed, I'm like, yeah, that to me that shouldn't be surprising at all. Like, what the intelligence community is like willing to like willing for you to die? Like that shouldn't be a surprise. Now, what was on the moon and why didn't we go back? I think you could very well argue that there's like alien artifacts or something. But I have to like revise my own when I see like people like looking at body language or why did this guy say this or do you think this movie was released to change the narrative? And I'm always like, dude, they're not doing that. They have stuff out of Groom Lake and they probably have a secret space program, but like they're not having actresses play things to plant seeds in your mind. And after reading this book, I'm come back and I'm like, nah, they might. Actually, I feel like this is the precedent. This is the threshold for saying they do. Now, again, this was way more intense than like the vast majority of operations. And I get that that's not the norm. This was like a platinum tier thing. Actually, platinum tier is probably shit we never heard about. But even like they sent like a plane there. We go in like 5 minutes. They sent like a plane over to where the fuck I think Chile, which is where it was like rendezvousing, full of like pilots and engineers and shit. And they wanted it to seem like it was like a real corporate bacchanalia. Wolf of Wall Street asking that like the plane itself turned into like a party plane or a pleasure plane to air conditioning. Gee. Um, so like if it's all CIA spooks, it's going to be very clean cut. And again, they want to make sure that there aren't moles. And the Soviets, it seemed like they were watching it. They knew something was up. Now the upside was that the Soviets didn't know exactly where K-129 went down, and we did. And that's the technological upside. But even when the Glomar Explorer went out there, there were still a bunch of Soviet ships nearby, and there's repeated instances. And you want to know how fucking crazy it was? So you have these layers of these concentric circles of like the white project, the black project, the unacknowledged. These guys think it's for manganese nodules and it's proprietary information. The inner guys think it's we got to get the sub for the CIA, and the innermost guys are actually we want to get we want to get the nuclear warheads for the AEC under the DOE. So by that logic, there's probably an innermost circle. I don't know what it would be. None of them even knew that we had our own ship followed by one of our own stealth nuclear submarines, had the nuclear warheads removed, and had just outfitted it with normal like ballistic conventional explosive torpedoes, and it trailed it. So that if it was ever boarded by the Soviets, and they had all these contingency plans to make sure it wasn't boarded by the Soviets, they went through, like uh, public official back channels about stop harassing our mining ship. They'd even, the deck was covered with like crates and shit, so no Soviet helicopter could land on it. And the Soviets tried. They brought a ship near and put a bunch of helicopters around it. We had a stealth attack sub that our people didn't know about, not to defend it, but to fucking sink it if it was boarded and kill everyone on board, all the CIA guys too. And they had a second attack sub in the dock, ready with all of its backup pieces in case for whatever reason the primary one couldn't go. We took two nuclear subs and had them ready to take down our own ship. Like, fucking melt your head. And then the foresight in that when they did, fuck, I gotta go. The foresight for when they did bring it up and part of it broke off. and they withdrew all the bodies. They actually gave them a proper burial with everyone on board and videotaped it, playing the US anthem and then the Soviet anthem, or maybe vice versa, so that decades down the road, when it was eventually declassified or somebody talked, they could back up that they did the right thing. I mean, I'm just in love. And I always say this, the problem with the military industrial intelligence complex is that it's just so fucking cool. So we gotta wrap this up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Go read the book.